My husband promised to put our marriage first, but every major decision went through his mother, who hated me from day one. I didn't see it at first. Or maybe I saw it but told myself it was normal, that all mothers were protective of their sons, that I was being too sensitive. But standing in the house we'd just bought, the house I'd never wanted, the house his mother had chosen, I finally understood. I wasn't married to one person. I was married to two. And I was losing. Before we go any further, if you're enjoying this story, please hit that like button, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, and subscribe with notifications turned on. Your support helps me keep sharing these stories. My name is Kennedy Blake, and I'm 31 years old. I'm an architect in Denver, Colorado, specializing in sustainable residential design. I design homes that are beautiful, functional, and environmentally responsible. I'm good at what I do, winning awards, getting featured in design magazines, building a reputation. The irony that I can't seem to design my own life the way I want it is not lost on me. I met my husband, Jason Hartwell, 5 years ago at a friend's wedding in Aspen. He was the best man, I was a bridesmaid, and we were seated next to each other at the reception. He was charming, successful, a corporate lawyer at a prestigious Denver firm, and he made me laugh in a way that felt easy and natural. We dated for 2 years before he proposed, and during that time, I should have seen the signs. But I was in love, and love makes you overlook things you shouldn't. The first time I met his mother, Diane Hartwell, was 3 months into our relationship. Jason had been putting it off, making excuses about her schedule, her travel, her health. When we finally had dinner at her house in Cherry Creek, I understood why. Diane was in her late 50s, impeccably dressed, with the kind of cold elegance that came from old Denver money. Her home was a showcase, all expensive furniture and carefully curated art. Everything in its place, nothing out of order. She looked me up and down when I arrived, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "So you're the architect," she said, making my profession sound like an accusation. "Yes, ma'am. I focus on sustainable residential design." "How modern?" She turned to Jason. "Darling, come help me in the kitchen." I was left standing in her living room, looking at family photos that didn't include me and wouldn't for the next 5 years. Dinner was a test I didn't know I was taking and failed anyway. Diane asked pointed questions about my family, middle class, not wealthy, my education, state school, not Ivy League, my career prospects, good but not corporate law. Every answer seemed to confirm what she'd already decided about me. I wasn't good enough for her son. Jason was oblivious, or pretended to be. On the drive home, when I mentioned how uncomfortable the evening had been, he laughed it off. "That's just how Mom is. She's protective. Give her time. She'll warm up to you." She never did, but I told myself it didn't matter. Jason loved me, and that's what counted. We'd build our life together, and his mother would be a peripheral figure who saw us on holidays and birthdays. I was so naive. The engagement should have been our first decision as a couple. I'd mentioned casually that I liked simple things, that an intimate proposal would be perfect. Maybe a hike to one of our favorite spots, just the two of us. Jason proposed at a restaurant his mother had chosen, in front of his entire family, with a ring his mother had helped him pick out. "Don't you love it?" he asked, slipping the massive diamond onto my finger while his mother beamed from across the table. It wasn't my style. It was too big, too flashy, too much like something Diane would wear. But I said yes because I loved him and because 30 people were watching and because I told myself the ring didn't matter. The wedding was worse. I'd wanted something small. A ceremony in the mountains, maybe 50 people, focusing on what actually mattered, 2 people committing to each other. Diane had other plans. "Jason is my only child," she said at our first wedding planning meeting, which she'd invited herself to. "This wedding needs to reflect our family's standing in the community." Our wedding became her production. 300 guests, most of whom I didn't know. A venue she'd selected. A menu she'd approved. Flowers she'd chosen. Even my dress had been influenced by her helpful suggestions that made the bridal salon appointments feel like battles I kept losing. "This is her only chance to do this," Jason said when I tried to object. "Let her have some input. It makes her happy." Some input had become all the input. On our wedding day, standing in a dress that wasn't quite what I wanted, in a venue that felt like Diane's fantasy rather than mine. I told myself it didn't matter. After today, it would be just Jason and me. We'd build our life our way. I was wrong about that too. The honeymoon was the first major decision after the wedding. I'd researched sustainable eco-resorts in Costa Rica, places where we could hike and explore and disconnect from the world. Jason came home one day with plane tickets to Paris. "Surprise," he said, grinning. 2 weeks in the city of love. My mom suggested it. She said Paris is more romantic than a jungle. I wanted the eco-resort. "We can do that another time. Paris is a once-in-a-lifetime trip." We went to Paris. It was beautiful, and I should have loved it. But every time we visited a museum his mother had recommended, or ate at a restaurant from her list, or stayed in the hotel she'd booked, I felt her presence between us. When we returned to Denver, we needed to find a place to live. I'd been renting a loft in Lodo, and Jason had a condo downtown. We talked about finding something new, something that was ours. I spent weeks researching neighborhoods, looking at properties, making spreadsheets comparing different options. I found a perfect renovated Victorian in Capitol Hill, close to my office, with great bones and potential for sustainable upgrades. "Let me show this to my mom," Jason said when I sent him the listing. "She knows Denver real estate really well." Diane hated it. "That neighborhood is declining," she said, though it wasn't. "And old houses are money pits. You need something newer, more practical." She found us a house in Cherry Creek, 2 blocks from her own home. A McMansion that was the opposite of everything I'd wanted, large, energy inefficient, in a neighborhood of cookie-cutter luxury homes. "It's a great investment," Jason said. "And Mom's right about being close to family. When we have kids, it'll be helpful. I don't want to live 2 blocks from your mother." He looked hurt. "Why not? Most people would be lucky to have family nearby." "Jason, every decision about our wedding went through her. The honeymoon went through her. Now our house? When do I get a say?" "You do have a say. But Mom has experience. She knows the city. And she wants what's best for us." "What about what I want?" "You're being unreasonable. This is a great house." We bought the house in Cherry Creek. I spent the first month there feeling like I was living in someone else's life. Diane came over constantly. She had a key, which Jason had given her in case of emergencies. She'd let herself in, rearrange things, leave helpful notes about better ways to organize the kitchen or suggestions for furniture we should buy. "Mom was just trying to help," Jason would say when I complained. "I don't need her help. I need her to respect our space." "You're being ungrateful." "She loves us." That became the pattern. Every boundary I tried to set was me being ungrateful, unreasonable, too sensitive. Every objection was me not appreciating how lucky we were to have a mother who cared so much. 1 year into our marriage, my firm offered me a major opportunity, a lead architect position on a sustainable housing development in Boulder. It was everything I'd been working toward: design leadership, environmental focus, creative freedom. The catch was Boulder, 45 minutes from Denver, meaning I'd need to relocate or face a long commute. I was excited. This was my career, my chance to do meaningful work. Jason's response was immediate. "Let me talk to my mom about it." "Why does your mother need to be involved in my career decision?" "Because it affects both of us. If you're in Boulder all the time, what about our marriage? Our future plans?" "We could move to Boulder. Or I could commute. Lots of people do it. I'll ask Mom what she thinks." Diane thought it was a terrible idea. She said it would strain our marriage, that I was being selfish putting career ahead of family, that Boulder was too far from the support system we'd need when we had children. Never mind that we hadn't even discussed having children yet. I took the job anyway. It was one of the few times I stood my ground, and Jason resented me for it. He sulked for weeks, making passive-aggressive comments about my commute, my long hours, how I was never home. Diane called regularly to express her disappointment. I raised Jason to value family. I hope you'll remember that. The Boulder project was incredible. I was designing affordable, net-zero energy homes. I was making a difference. But coming home each night to Jason's resentment and Diane's interference made it feel like I was failing at the thing that was supposed to matter most, my marriage. 2 years into our marriage, the baby conversation started. I wasn't ready. My career was taking off. The Boulder project was expanding. I had goals I wanted to achieve first. Jason started leaving pamphlets about fertility in our bathroom, articles about biological clocks. His mother started making pointed comments about grandchildren at every family gathering. "When are you two going to make me a grandmother?" she'd ask, looking directly at me like I was denying her something she was owed. "We're not ready yet," I'd say. "You're 30. How much longer are you going to wait? You need to think about Jason's needs, not just your own career." At Thanksgiving, 3 years into our marriage, Diane cornered me in the kitchen while I was helping with dishes. "I know you're focused on your career," she said, her voice sweet but her eyes cold. "But Jason deserves a wife who puts him first, who wants to build a family with him. I do want those things. Just not right now. Sometimes we have to sacrifice what we want for the people we love. That's what marriage is." I bit back a response about how maybe her son could also sacrifice, could also wait, could also consider my career as important as his desire for children. But I knew it wouldn't matter. In Diane's world, wives sacrificed, husbands were catered to, and mothers-in-law got to weigh in on everything. The breaking point came 6 months ago. I'd been nominated for a prestigious design award. The ceremony was in Seattle on a Saturday evening. It was a big deal, recognition I'd worked for my entire career. Jason had promised to come. He'd put it on his calendar, requested the day off work, told me he'd be there to support me. 2 days before the trip, he called. "Babe, I'm so sorry. I can't make it to Seattle." "What? Why not?" "Mom's having this charity gala. She's being honored for her volunteer work. She really wants us there. Jason, you promised. This award is important to me." "I know, and I'm proud of you. But this is important to Mom. Can't you reschedule?" "Reschedule an award ceremony?" "No, I can't reschedule. You told me you'd be there, and I want to be, but Mom needs me." "What about what I need?" "You're being selfish, Kennedy. This is a huge honor for my mother. Can't you be supportive for once?" I went to Seattle alone. I won the award. I gave my acceptance speech to a room full of colleagues and strangers, and the chair next to me where my husband should have been sitting was empty. I took a photo of the award and sent it to Jason. He responded hours later. "Congrats. Mom's event was amazing. Wish you could have been here." I sat in my hotel room that night, looking at my award, and something in me broke. Or maybe it wasn't breaking. Maybe it was clarity. I wasn't married to Jason. I was married to Jason and Diane. And in that triangle, I would always come third. Every major decision in our marriage had gone through her. The wedding, the honeymoon, the house, my career, our future children. Nothing was just between my husband and me. And Jason didn't see the problem. He'd been raised to believe his mother's opinion mattered more than anyone else's, including his wife's. I flew home from Seattle on Sunday, and instead of going to the Cherry Creek house that I hated, I drove to my office. I sat at my desk, and I made a list. Every decision that had been made against my wishes. Every time Jason had prioritized his mother over me. Every promise he'd broken because Diane wanted something different. The list was 3 pages long. I looked at it and understood what I'd been refusing to see for 5 years. This wasn't going to change. Jason wasn't going to wake up one day and realize he'd married me, not his mother. Diane wasn't going to step back and let us build our own life. This was the marriage. This was my future. Unless I changed it. I spent that week researching divorce attorneys in Denver. I wasn't ready to file yet, but I needed to understand my options, what it would look like to leave. Every lawyer said the same thing. Document everything, especially the financial entanglements. Diane had co-signed our mortgage, had financial ties to Jason's career, had her hands in every aspect of our life together. Disentangling from a relationship like this is complicated, one attorney told me. But it's possible. You just need to be strategic. I started documenting. I created folders on my secure work server. I tracked every decision, every broken promise, every time Diane had overruled me and Jason had let her. I wasn't sure what I was going to do with it yet, but I knew I needed evidence of the pattern, proof that I wasn't imagining this, that the problem was real. One night, I came home late from Boulder. Jason was already in bed. I found a note on the kitchen counter in Diane's handwriting. Stopped by to drop off the paint samples for the nursery. I picked out some lovely neutrals. The painter can start next month. Diane. I went upstairs. Jason was asleep, but there on the nightstand was a folder full of paint samples and a contract with a contractor to convert our guest room into a nursery. We hadn't agreed to have a baby. We hadn't even seriously discussed it in months. But Diane had decided it was time, so she was preparing our house for a child I hadn't consented to conceiving. I stood in that bedroom, looking at my sleeping husband, and I realized he'd probably known about this. Probably discussed it with his mother. Probably agreed to it without ever asking me. I took the folder downstairs, photographed every page, uploaded it to my secure server, and then put it back exactly where I'd found it. The next morning, I woke up with clarity I hadn't felt in years. I wasn't going to confront Jason about the nursery. I wasn't going to yell or cry or demand he choose between his mother and me, because I already knew how that would go. Instead, I was going to do what I should have done years ago. I was going to take back control of my life, starting with the one decision I could make entirely on my own, whether to stay in this marriage. And I was beginning to think I already knew the answer. I didn't confront Jason about the nursery. Instead, I did something I'd never done before. I started playing the game. For 5 years, I'd been honest to a fault. I'd voiced my concerns, expressed my needs, tried to communicate openly about what was wrong with our marriage. And it had gotten me nowhere. Diane and Jason operated differently. They smiled and nodded and said whatever kept the peace, then did exactly what they wanted anyway. So I started doing the same thing. When Jason woke up the morning after I found the nursery folder, I was making breakfast like nothing had happened. "Morning," he said, kissing my cheek. "You got in late last night. Project in Boulder ran long. How was your day?" "Good." Mom stopped by. I saw the note. I poured him coffee, kept my voice light. "Paint samples for the nursery?" He had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable. "Yeah, about that. I was going to talk to you about it. Mom thinks we should start getting ready, for when we decide to start trying." "When we decide," I repeated. "Right. Obviously, it's our decision. Mom just wanted to help us be prepared." I could have pointed out that preparing a nursery before we'd even agreed to have a baby was presumptuous. I could have asked why he'd discussed this with his mother before discussing it with me. I could have started the fight he was clearly bracing for. Instead, I smiled. That's thoughtful of her. Though we should probably talk about timing before we paint anything. The relief on his face was almost comical. Of course. Absolutely. We'll talk about it. We both knew we wouldn't. Or rather, he'd talk to his mother about it, and I'd be presented with whatever they decided. But I was done arguing about it. I had other plans. At work that day, I met with my project manager on the Boulder development. "Kennedy, the investors are impressed with your work. They want to expand your role. Basically make you the primary designer for all their sustainable projects going forward." It was a promotion. A significant one. More creative control, better pay, and a chance to shape the future of affordable, sustainable housing. It also meant more time in Boulder, possibly relocating there entirely. "I'm interested," I said. "Can I have a week to think about it?" Take 2. This is a big decision. I went home that night and told Jason about the opportunity. I watched his face carefully as I explained what it would mean. "Boulder," he said. "You'd have to move there?" "Probably. Or commute more than I already do." "But Jason, this is huge for my career. It's everything I've been working toward. Let me talk to my mom about it." There it was. Exactly what I'd expected. "Actually," I said carefully, "I think this is a decision we should make together. Just us." He looked uncomfortable. "Of course. But Mom has good perspective on these things. She understands work-life balance." Diane had never worked a day in her life. She'd married young, lived off her husband's money, and spent her time on charity boards and society events. The idea that she understood work-life balance was laughable. But I didn't say that. "Why don't you talk to her if you want?" I said. "But I'd like us to have a conversation about it too. Just you and me." "Sure," he said, already pulling out his phone to text her. I went upstairs and added this conversation to my documentation folder. Date, time, Jason's immediate impulse to consult Diane before discussing it with me. The folder was getting extensive. I had spreadsheets now, organized by category: housing decisions, career decisions, financial decisions, family planning, social events. Each one documented the pattern of Diane's interference and Jason's enabling. I also started documenting something else: finances. Our mortgage was in both our names, but Diane had co-signed it. She'd also given us a substantial gift for the down payment, which I now suspected came with invisible strings. I pulled our bank statements, credit card records, joint accounts. I made copies of everything and stored them in my secure work server. Then I did something that felt slightly crazy but completely necessary. I opened my own bank account. One Jason didn't know about. I started diverting part of my paycheck there, building a fund that was entirely mine. If I was going to leave, I needed to be financially independent. I couldn't risk Diane's money being used as leverage. A week later, Jason came home with an answer about the Boulder promotion. I talked to Mom about your job offer, and she thinks you should turn it down. She says Boulder is too far, that it would put too much strain on our marriage. And she's right. If you're gone all the time, when are we going to work on starting a family? We haven't agreed to start a family, but we will eventually, right? And when we do, you'll need to be around more, not less. I looked at my husband, this man I'd loved enough to marry, and I felt nothing but cold calculation. What do you think? I asked. Not your mom. You. Do you think I should turn down this opportunity? He hesitated. For just a moment, I saw something in his eyes. Uncertainty, maybe even guilt, but then it was gone. I think Mom makes good points. Your career is important, but so is our marriage. My career has always been important to me, Jason. You knew that when you married me. I know. But there has to be balance. And right now, it feels like work comes first. Only because you keep putting your mother first. His face hardened. That's not fair, isn't it? When's the last time we made a major decision without consulting her? She's family. Of course we consult her. Your mom is family. I'm supposed to be your partner. There's a difference. We were heading toward familiar territory, the fight we'd had 100 times, the one that never resolved anything. I pulled back. I need to think about the promotion. I'm not making any hasty decisions. Good, he said, clearly relieved to avoid the fight. That's mature. I went to bed that night and lay awake, planning. I was going to take the Boulder job. But I wasn't going to tell Jason until after I'd accepted it, after the contracts were signed, after it was too late for Diane to interfere. And I was going to use the promotion as leverage for what came next. The following week, Diane invited us to Sunday dinner at her house. It was a command performance disguised as an invitation. We always went. I wore a dress I knew she'd approve of, styled my hair the way she preferred, and played the role of grateful daughter-in-law. Kennedy, she said when we arrived, kissing my cheek with her usual coolness. You look lovely. That color suits you much better than those dark tones you usually wear. I'd been wearing navy blue, one of my favorite colors. But Diane thought it was too severe for a woman my age. Thank you, Diane. You look beautiful as always. At dinner, she held court, discussing her various charity projects and society commitments. Jason hung on every word, asking questions, laughing at her jokes, seeking her approval in everything. I watched them interact and saw clearly what I'd been denying for 5 years. Jason would never choose me over her. He'd been programmed since birth to prioritize his mother's needs, opinions, and desires above everyone else's, including his wife's. So, Kennedy, Diane said, turning her attention to me. Jason tells me you have a job opportunity in Boulder. Here it was. The real reason for the dinner. Yes. It's a great opportunity, but you're not seriously considering it, are you? Boulder is so far. And with the family planning you two should be doing, it seems like poor timing. I smiled pleasantly. We're still discussing it. Well, I hope you'll make the right decision. Jason needs a wife who's present, not someone chasing career ambitions at the expense of their marriage. The implication was clear. I was failing as a wife because I had career ambitions. Mom, Jason said, uncomfortable. Kennedy's career is important. Of course it is, darling. I'm just saying there are priorities. Family comes first. I wanted to point out that my career was part of how I contributed to our family. That my income mattered. That my fulfillment mattered. But I didn't. I just smiled and said, of course you're right, Diane. Family is important. She looked pleased, believing she'd won. I excused myself to use the bathroom and wandered through her house, this shrine to control and manipulation. Every photo was perfectly placed, every surface immaculate. In her home office, I noticed a file folder on her desk labeled Jason and Kennedy. I glanced back toward the dining room. They were still talking and quickly opened it. Inside were documents I didn't expect. Financial records showing Diane's gift for our down payment was actually structured as a loan. Notes about the nursery preparation. A list of obstetricians she'd researched for when they're ready. And at the bottom, a draft email to Jason's firm recommending a transfer to their Denver office from his current position, which would require him to work more closely with Diane's social circle and further enmesh him in her world. I took photos of everything with my phone, my hands shaking slightly. This wasn't just interference. This was systematic control of every aspect of our lives. I returned to dinner, and for the rest of the evening, I played my role perfectly. Agreeable Kennedy, grateful Kennedy, the daughter-in-law who knew her place. When we left, Diane hugged me and whispered, "I'm so glad you understand about Boulder. Jason needs you here." I smiled and hugged her back. "Thank you for dinner, Diane." In the car, Jason was relaxed, happy. "That went well. Mom really appreciates when you make an effort." "I always make an effort." "I know. I just mean, when you don't push back on things. It makes everything easier." Easier for whom, I wanted to ask, but I didn't. The next day, I accepted the Boulder position. I signed the contract, negotiated a significant raise, and agreed to relocate within 3 months. I didn't tell Jason. I also did something else. I scheduled a consultation with a divorce attorney. Not to file yet, but to understand my options, my rights, what leaving would actually look like. The attorney, a woman named Rebecca Martinez, reviewed my documentation. "This is extensive," she said. "You've been thorough." I wanted to make sure I wasn't imagining it, that the pattern was real. It's very real. What you're describing is called enmeshment. Your husband hasn't successfully separated from his mother, and she's actively maintaining that dynamic. Can I use this in a divorce? Colorado is a no-fault divorce state, so the enmeshment itself isn't grounds for anything. But this documentation shows a pattern of decision-making that could be relevant in asset division, especially if we can prove your career was hindered by his mother's interference. What about the house? She co-signed the mortgage. Rebecca made notes. That complicates things but doesn't make it impossible. We'd need to establish what percentage each party contributed, demonstrate that you've been making payments, show that you have the means to refinance without her.
Ida.
My new position in Boulder comes with a significant raise. Perfect. That helps. Are you ready to file? I thought about it. Not yet. I need to set a few more things up first. But soon. When you're ready, call me. In the meantime, keep documenting. And start separating your finances as much as possible. I left her office feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. That evening, I came home to find Diane in my kitchen. Again. Using her key. Again. "Kennedy, I was just leaving you a note. I picked up some prenatal vitamins for you. Now that you're not taking that Boulder job, you can focus on getting healthy for pregnancy."
Sterkte her.
I haven't decided about Boulder yet. Oh, but surely you will. Jason needs you here. And these vitamins are excellent. My doctor recommended them when I was trying to conceive Jason. She'd bought me prenatal vitamins. Without asking. Assuming I'd be getting pregnant soon because she decided it was time. "Thank you," I said, taking the bottle. "That's very thoughtful." As soon as she left, I threw them in the trash. Then I called my boss. "I need to accelerate my relocation timeline for Boulder. Can we make it happen in a month instead of 3? Is everything okay?" "Everything's fine. I'm just eager to start the new position. We can make it work. I'll have HR expedite everything. 1 month. I had 1 month to set up my life in Boulder, find an apartment, get established, and then tell Jason I was leaving. Not just Boulder. Him. I spent the next 2 weeks in careful preparation. I found an apartment in Boulder, signed a lease, started moving small things there, clothes, books, personal items Jason wouldn't notice were gone. I opened a new credit card in my name only. I changed my direct deposit to my new private account. I updated my beneficiaries on my retirement accounts and life insurance. I was methodically separating my life from his, and he didn't notice. He was too busy checking with his mother about everything to pay attention to what I was actually doing. 3 weeks after accepting the Boulder position, I came home to find Jason and Diane in the nursery, the room that was supposed to be our guest room, with paint samples spread across the floor. "Oh, good, you're home," Jason said. "Mom and I were just finalizing the paint choice. We're thinking this soft yellow. Gender neutral, perfect for a baby." I looked at them, my husband and his mother, making decisions about a child that didn't exist, in a house I'd never wanted, in a life I was about to leave. "That's a lovely choice," I said. Diane beamed. "I'm so glad you agree. The painter can start next week." "Perfect," I said. They had no idea. That weekend, I moved the last of my important belongings to Boulder. I was ready. On Monday morning, I made breakfast like normal. Jason came down, distracted as usual, checking his phone. "I have some news," I said casually. "I accepted the Boulder position. I start full-time next week, and I'm relocating there." He looked up, confused. "What? You turned that down?" "No, I didn't. You and your mother decided I should turn it down. I made my own decision. Kennedy, we talked about this. You and Diane talked about it. I was never actually part of that conversation." His face was turning red. "This is a major decision. You can't just make it without discussing it with me." The irony was almost too much. "Jason, you've made every major decision in our marriage without discussing it with me. You just consulted your mother and told me what had already been decided. The wedding, the honeymoon, the house, the nursery. All Diane's choices, not mine. That's not fair. It's completely fair. So I'm making this choice. My career, my decision. I'm taking the promotion and moving to Boulder. And what about our marriage?" I looked at him. This man-child who'd never learned to function without his mother's approval. "That's a good question," I said. "What about our marriage?" "Kennedy, if you do this, if you move to Boulder against my wishes, I don't know if we can survive it." "Against your wishes. Not our decision. Your wishes. And by extension, your mother's wishes. Stop making this about my mom. Everything is about your mom, Jason. That's the problem. I'm your wife, but I've never been your priority. She has." "That's not true. When's the last time you chose me over her? Made a decision that she disagreed with because it's what I needed?" "When?" He couldn't answer. "I'm moving to Boulder," I said. "Whether you support that or not is up to you. But I'm done asking permission to live my life." I left for work, leaving him standing in our kitchen, probably already calling his mother. That evening, my phone rang. "Diane." I almost didn't answer, but I was curious about how she'd approach this. "Kennedy," she said, her voice tight with barely controlled anger. "Jason told me about your decision to take the Boulder job." "Did he?" "I think you're making a terrible mistake. This will destroy your marriage. Will it? Or will it just make it harder for you to control our lives?" Silence. Then, "I don't know what you mean." "I think you do, Diane. I've been documenting everything for months. Every decision you've made for us, every time you've overruled my wishes, every way you've inserted yourself into our marriage. I know about the loan you structured as a gift. I know about the nursery you're preparing without my consent. I know about the career transfer you're arranging for Jason." More silence. "So here's what's going to happen," I continued, surprised by how calm I sounded. "I'm taking the Boulder job. I'm relocating. And Jason can either support his wife's career or continue being his mother's obedient son. But he can't do both anymore. You're being selfish and immature. I'm being an adult who makes her own decisions. Something you've prevented Jason from learning how to do. If you do this, you'll regret it. Diane, the only thing I regret is not doing it sooner." I hung up. My hands were shaking, but I felt oddly exhilarated. For 5 years, I'd been polite, accommodating, trying to make peace. And it had gotten me nowhere. Now I was done playing nice. Jason came home late that night. I was already in bed, reading. "We need to talk," he said. "Okay." "My mom is very upset." "I know. She called me. She says you were rude to her. That you accused her of controlling our lives." "I didn't accuse her. I stated facts." "Kennedy, she's trying to help us." "Jason, stop. Just stop." I put down my book and looked at him. "Did you want to save our marriage?" Of course I do. Then you need to make a choice. Me or your mother. You can't keep prioritizing her and expect me to stay. That's not a fair choice. It's completely fair. Every spouse makes that choice when they get married. They choose their partner as their primary family. You've never done that, because you're asking me to cut off my mother. I'm asking you to have boundaries. To make decisions with me, not through her. To live our life, not the life she's planning for us. I don't know how to do that. It was the first honest thing he'd said in weeks. Then maybe, I said quietly, we shouldn't be married. His face went pale. You're talking about divorce? I'm talking about reality. We're not partners, Jason. We're 3 people trying to be 2. And I can't do this anymore. Don't say that. We can fix this. We can go to counseling. Would you go to counseling without asking your mother's permission first? He didn't answer. That's what I thought, I said. I'm sleeping in the guest room tonight. We'll talk more later. I gathered my pillow and left him sitting on our bed, looking lost. I slept in the guest room, the one that was supposed to become a nursery, and I felt nothing but relief. 3 days later, I was officially relocated to Boulder. I told Jason I was doing a trial period, staying in temporary housing to see if I liked it. The truth was I'd moved into my new apartment, the one with my name only on the lease, and I was never coming back to the Cherry Creek house. I just hadn't told him yet. I was waiting for one more thing, the documentation I needed to make my case for divorce airtight. Rebecca had advised me to get Jason to admit, in writing, that his mother was involved in major marital decisions. That his priority was maintaining his relationship with her, even at the expense of our marriage. So I texted him, "Can we talk about counseling? Maybe that would help us work through this." He responded immediately, "Yes. Let me ask my mom for recommendations for therapists." Perfect. I screenshotted it, added it to my folder. Evidence that even when discussing marriage counseling, his first instinct was to consult his mother. That night, alone in my Boulder apartment, I looked out at the mountains and felt something I hadn't felt in 5 years. Freedom. I was still married, technically, but I was no longer trapped. And soon, very soon, I was going to be completely free. Living in Boulder was like breathing clean air after years of suffocation. My apartment was small, efficient, entirely mine. No one had a key except me. No one rearranged my kitchen or left helpful notes about better ways to organize my life. No one made decisions about my space without asking. It was the first time in 5 years I'd felt at home. Work was incredible. The sustainable housing project was everything I'd hoped for. Creative freedom, meaningful impact, colleagues who respected my expertise. I was designing homes for people who actually needed them, creating spaces that were both beautiful and affordable. I was winning awards, getting recognition in architectural journals, being invited to speak at conferences about sustainable design. Everything I'd sacrificed my marriage for was worth it. Jason called constantly those first 2 weeks. Texts, voicemails, emails. All variations on the same theme. "Come home. We can work this out. You're being unreasonable." I responded minimally. "I'm settling into the new job. We'll talk when I'm ready." Diane's calls I didn't answer at all. 3 weeks into my Boulder life, Jason showed up at my apartment unannounced. I opened the door to find him standing in the hallway, looking haggard and desperate. "We need to talk," he said. "You should have called first. You're not answering my calls."
I'm unsetting.
"I'm just not saying what you want to hear." I didn't invite him in, keeping the door partially closed. "What do you want, Jason?" "I want my wife to come home. That house has never been my home. It's your mother's satellite location." "Kennedy, please. I know I've made mistakes, but we can fix this. Come home. We'll go to counseling. I'll set better boundaries with my mom. Will you? Because last time I suggested counseling, your first instinct was to ask your mother for therapist recommendations." He had the grace to look embarrassed. "I know. That was stupid. But I can change. Can you? Or are you just saying what you think I want to hear, because your mother told you to get me back?" His silence was answer enough. "Did she tell you to come here?" I asked. "She suggested it might help if we talked in person." I almost laughed. Even you trying to save our marriage, you can't do without her input. That's not fair. Jason, answer me honestly. Can you make a major decision without consulting your mother first? Can you choose what I want over what she wants? Can you live a life where she's not involved in every aspect? He struggled with the question. I could see him trying to formulate an answer that would satisfy me without actually committing to anything. I don't know, he finally said. She's my mother. I can't just cut her off. I'm not asking you to cut her off. I'm asking you to be a husband instead of a son. But you don't know how to do that. So, what? We're done? 5 years of marriage, and you're just giving up? I'm not giving up. I'm accepting reality. You married me, but you never left her. And I can't compete with that anymore. Kennedy, I want a divorce, Jason. The words hung in the air between us. He looked like I'd slapped him. You can't mean that. I've already consulted with an attorney. I'll be filing papers next week. Mom said you were bluffing. She said you'd come back once you realized how hard it is to make it on your own. Of course she did. Because in Diane's world, women can't survive without a man and his mother controlling every aspect of their lives. But I'm not in her world anymore. What about the house? Our life? Everything we've built together? We haven't built anything together, Jason. Your mother built it, and we've been living in her design. I'm done with that. He looked devastated, and part of me felt bad for him. He'd been raised to be like this, groomed since childhood to prioritize his mother above all else. In some ways, he was as much a victim of Diane's control as I was. But I couldn't save him. I could only save myself. I'm sorry, I said, more gently. I know this isn't entirely your fault, but it's also not my responsibility to fix. You need to figure out who you are separate from your mother. And you can't do that while you're married to me. Please don't do this. It's already done. You'll be served with divorce papers in a few days. Please don't contest it. Make this easy on both of us. I closed the door. I heard him standing there for a few minutes, then his footsteps retreating down the hall. I leaned against the door and waited to feel sad, to feel regret, to feel something other than relief. But all I felt was free. The next day, I called Rebecca Martinez. I'm ready to file. Are you sure? Completely. I want to move forward as quickly as possible. Okay. Let's meet tomorrow and finalize everything. We spent 3 hours going over the documents. The petition cited irreconcilable differences, requested an equitable division of assets, and included extensive documentation of Diane's interference in our marriage. This documentation is remarkable, Rebecca said. It won't affect the legal outcome. Colorado is no fault, but it creates a clear narrative that supports your position. When will he be served? We can have him served at work on Friday. Or at home, if you prefer. Work, I said. Diane won't be there to coach him through his immediate reaction. Rebecca smiled slightly. Strategic. I like it. Friday afternoon, I was in a meeting with my project team when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It was a photo of Jason being handed divorce papers by a process server in his office building lobby. Rebecca had sent it. All done, her message read. He's been served. I excused myself from the meeting and went to my office, closing the door. I sat at my desk and waited for the calls. They came within minutes. Jason, 12 missed calls. Diane, 8 missed calls. Jason's texts came in rapid succession. What the fuck, Kennedy? You can't be serious. We need to talk right now. This is insane. Call me. Diane's voicemails were more controlled, but seething with anger. Kennedy, this is inappropriate and vindictive. Call me immediately. We need to discuss this before you make a decision you'll regret. I didn't call either of them back. Instead, I texted Jason, you've been served with divorce papers. Please have your attorney contact mine. All future communication should go through our lawyers. Then I blocked both their numbers. The relief was immediate. That weekend, I went hiking in the Flatirons, something I'd always wanted to do, but never had time for when I was commuting from Denver. I stood at the summit, looking out over Boulder, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Pride. I'd done this. I'd extracted myself from a situation that was slowly killing who I was. I'd taken control of my life back from people who thought they owned it. I was 31 years old, starting over, and it felt like the beginning of everything instead of the end. On Monday, Rebecca called. Jason's attorney reached out. He wants to negotiate. What's he offering? He's willing to let you keep most of the furniture from the house if you agree to buy out his share of the equity. His mother is also demanding full repayment of the down payment loan. I laughed. Of course she is. What else? He wants to keep the house. Says it was his mother's choice and she should get to decide what happens to it. Perfect. He can have it. I never wanted it anyway. You're sure? The equity is substantial. I'm sure. I want to be done with that house. It's never felt like mine. Let him keep it and all the memories of his mother choosing the paint colors. And the down payment demand? Tell them we'll agree to a payment plan, but only if they provide documentation proving it was structured as a loan from the beginning. Because I have copies of the original gift paperwork that says otherwise. Rebecca laughed. You really did your homework. I had a lot of time to prepare. The negotiation took 2 weeks. Jason's attorney pushed back on several points, but I held firm. I didn't want the house. I didn't want furniture I'd never chosen. I wanted my freedom and a clean break. We settled on terms. Jason kept the house and most of the physical assets. I kept my retirement accounts, my car, my personal belongings. We split our savings down the middle, and Diane's loan was recognized as a gift, meaning they couldn't demand repayment. The final terms would be reviewed by a judge in 60 days, and then we'd be officially divorced. During those 60 days, Diane escalated. She somehow got my Boulder office number and called repeatedly. My assistant started screening the calls. She showed up at my apartment building. The doorman, who I'd warned about her, didn't let her up. She stood in the lobby for an hour, demanding to see me, before finally leaving. She sent emails. Long, rambling messages about how I was destroying her son, how I was being selfish and vindictive, how I'd regret this decision. I forwarded them all to Rebecca, who added them to our file as evidence of harassment. Do you want to get a restraining order? She asked. Not yet. I want to see if she'll stop on her own once the divorce is final. But Diane wasn't capable of stopping. She'd spent 33 years controlling Jason's life, and I was threatening that control by removing myself from the equation. 5 weeks into the 60-day waiting period, she cornered me. I was leaving a restaurant in Boulder after dinner with colleagues when I found her waiting by my car. We need to talk, she said. No, we don't. I have nothing to say to you, Diane. You're making a huge mistake. Jason loves you. I was trying to help you build a good marriage. By making every decision for us? By treating me like an incubator for your grandchildren? By controlling every aspect of our lives. I was helping. You were controlling. There's a difference. And Jason was too weak to stop you, because you raised him to believe your opinion matters more than anyone else's, including his wife's. Her face went red. How dare you? I have documentation, Diane. Spreadsheets, photos, recordings. Years of interference. I know about the loan you tried to disguise as a gift. I know about the nursery you prepared, without my consent. I know about the career transfer you were arranging for Jason. I know everything. She looked genuinely shocked. You've been spying on me? I've been protecting myself from you. And now I'm free of you. The divorce will be final in 3 weeks, and you'll never have control over my life again. Jason still needs me. Jason needs therapy. He needs to learn how to be an adult instead of a perpetual child. But that's not my problem anymore. He's all yours, Diane. Enjoy your victory. I got in my car and drove away, leaving her standing in the parking lot. My hands were shaking, but I felt powerful. She couldn't hurt me anymore. She had no leverage, no control, no access to my life. I was beyond her reach. 2 weeks before the divorce was supposed to be finalized, Jason called from a number I hadn't blocked. Kennedy, please. Just talk to me for 5 minutes. I should have hung up, but something in his voice made me pause. 5 minutes, I said. I've been going to therapy. Real therapy. With someone I found myself, not someone my mother recommended. Good for you. I've been learning about enmeshment, about boundaries, about how my relationship with my mother is unhealthy. I could have told you that for free. I know. And I'm sorry I didn't listen. I'm sorry for all of it. You were right about everything. Jason, this doesn't change anything. I know. I'm not asking you to come back. I know it's too late for us. I just wanted you to know that you were right. And I'm sorry I made you fight so hard for something that should have been automatic. You deserved better. It was the first genuine apology he'd ever given me. "Thank you," I said quietly. "I hope therapy helps you." "Me too. For what it's worth, I think you're going to do amazing things in Boulder." "You already are. I saw the article about your housing project in the Denver Post. You're changing people's lives." "I'm trying." "Kennedy." "Yeah. I hope someday you find someone who puts you first, who chooses you without having to think about it. You deserve that." "I hope you find yourself," I said. "The person you are when you're not trying to please your mother." We said goodbye. I hung up feeling something unexpected: closure. The divorce was finalized on a Tuesday afternoon. I sat in the courtroom in Boulder. Jason sat in Denver via video conference, and the judge reviewed our settlement agreement. The court finds the terms fair and equitable. The divorce is granted. You're both free to move forward with your lives. Just like that, it was over. I walked out of the courthouse into bright Colorado sunshine and felt the weight of 5 years lift off my shoulders. I texted my best friend, Maya, who'd moved to Boulder 6 months earlier. "It's official. I'm divorced." She responded immediately. "Champagne tonight. My place. 7 p.m. I went back to my office and worked on my housing project, lost in the creativity and problem-solving that had always fulfilled me more than my marriage ever had. At 7, I showed up at Maya's house with a smile on my face. "How do you feel?" she asked, pouring champagne. "Free," I said. "Completely, utterly free." "To freedom," she said, raising her glass. "To choosing myself," I said. We drank, and I felt nothing but joy. 3 months after the divorce, I won a major national award for sustainable architecture. The ceremony was in Chicago, and this time, I didn't need anyone to come with me. I sat in the audience alone, surrounded by colleagues and peers, and when they called my name, I walked to that stage with my head high. I gave my acceptance speech about creating homes that empower people, about building spaces that reflect who we truly are rather than who others want us to be. The audience stood and applauded. Afterward, at the reception, a woman approached me. She was probably 40, elegant and confident. "That was an incredible speech," she said. "I'm Claire Morrison. I run a sustainable architecture firm in Seattle. I'd love to talk to you about a potential collaboration." We talked for an hour. About design philosophy, about creating meaningful spaces, about changing the world one building at a time. She offered me a consulting position with her firm, working on projects across the Pacific Northwest. I accepted. 6 months after the divorce, I was thriving in ways I'd never imagined. My career was flourishing. I had friends, a community, a life that was entirely mine. I occasionally heard updates about Jason through mutual acquaintances. He was still in therapy. He'd started setting boundaries with Diane. It was a slow process, but he was trying. I hoped it worked out for him. But mostly, I didn't think about him at all. 1 year after the divorce, I was hiking in Rocky Mountain National Park when I ran into someone I vaguely knew from college. His name was Michael, and he was a photographer documenting Colorado wildlife. We talked for hours while hiking about art and nature and life. He asked if I wanted to get coffee sometime. I said yes. Not because I needed someone in my life, but because I wanted to see where it might go. On our 3rd date, over dinner at a restaurant I'd chosen, he asked about my marriage. "What went wrong?" he said. "If you don't mind me asking." "I wasn't married to one person," I said. "I was married to my husband and his mother. And I finally realized I deserved better than 3rd place in my own marriage. That must have been hard to walk away from. The hardest thing I've ever done. And the best decision I've ever made." He reached across the table and took my hand. "For what it's worth, I think you're incredibly brave." I smiled. "I think I just finally learned to choose myself." Michael and I dated for 6 months before making anything official. We took it slow, built trust, communicated openly about what we wanted and needed. He lived in Boulder, worked independently, had healthy relationships with his family, but maintained appropriate boundaries. He was everything Jason wasn't: self-sufficient, emotionally mature, capable of making decisions without consulting everyone in his life first. When he met my parents, he asked them thoughtful questions and listened to their answers. He didn't seek their approval or try to impress them. He just wanted to know them because they were important to me. It was such a stark contrast to Jason's desperate need for parental validation that I almost cried. "I like him," my mother said after that first meeting. "He sees you. Really sees you." She was right. 2 years after my divorce, I was named one of Architecture Magazine's 40 Under 40 Rising Stars in Sustainable Design. The feature included a spread of my Boulder housing project, my Seattle collaborations, and my vision for the future of affordable, eco-friendly homes. The article mentioned my divorce in passing. After leaving a marriage that didn't support her career ambitions, Blake relocated to Boulder and has since flourished, proving that sometimes the best design decision is knowing what to tear down to make room for something better. I framed that quote and hung it in my office. Diane sent one final email after that article was published. I hadn't heard from her in over a year, but apparently, she couldn't resist. "I see you're doing well for yourself. I hope you're happy with your choices." Jason is engaged to a lovely woman who actually values family. They're planning a wedding for next spring, and he's finally moving forward with his life. I read it twice, waiting for the sting, the jealousy, the regret. It never came. Instead, I felt something like relief. Jason had found someone who fit into the life Diane had designed for him. Someone who didn't mind coming third, who accepted the terms of the triangulated relationship. Good for him. Good for her. Good for Diane, who got to keep her control. I had something better. Myself. I deleted the email and went back to my work. 3 years after my divorce, Michael and I moved in together. We bought a house in the mountains outside Boulder, a sustainable design I'd created specifically for us. Solar panels, geothermal heating, reclaimed materials, surrounded by aspens and pines. It was the first house that ever felt like home. We didn't get married. Neither of us needed a legal document to validate our commitment. We were partners by choice, every single day, with no one else making decisions for us. My career continued to soar. I was invited to teach at the University of Colorado, to speak at conferences worldwide, to consult on projects that were changing how we think about sustainable living. Everything I'd sacrificed my marriage for had been worth it, and everything I'd gained by choosing myself was more valuable than anything I'd lost. Sometimes I thought about that moment in the Cherry Creek house, standing in the room Diane had converted to a nursery without my permission, looking at paint samples for a baby I'd never agreed to have. That had been my breaking point. The moment I'd realized I had to choose between the life others wanted me to live and the life I wanted for myself. I'd chosen myself, and I'd never looked back. 5 years after my divorce, I stood in front of the United Nations Sustainable Development Summit in New York, presenting my vision for affordable housing that could change how we think about urban poverty. The audience was filled with world leaders, architects, urban planners, and philanthropists. My presentation included case studies from the Boulder Housing Project, the Seattle Collaborations, and my newest initiative, a global network of sustainable communities that provided dignified, beautiful homes for families living below the poverty line. "We've been designing poverty wrong," I said, showing images of the communities we'd built. "We assume people with limited resources need limited design. But dignity has no income requirement. Beautiful, sustainable, empowering spaces should be accessible to everyone, not just those who can afford luxury." The applause was overwhelming. Afterward, 3 governments approached me about implementing similar projects in their countries. I was 36 years old, and I'd built something that mattered. More than that, I'd built myself into someone I was proud to be. Michael was in the audience, beaming. We'd been together for almost 5 years, and he still looked at me like I was the most interesting person in any room. We'd never gotten married, and I'd never wanted to. Marriage, for me, had meant loss of autonomy, compromise for the wrong reasons, subordinating my needs to someone else's expectations. But partnership? Real, chosen everyday partnership? That I could do. Michael and I owned the house in the mountains together, made decisions together, built a life that reflected both our values. When his mother visited from Oregon, she stayed in a hotel because that's what healthy boundaries looked like. When my parents came, they asked before giving advice. It was everything my marriage to Jason had never been. After the UN presentation, I had dinner with Claire Morrison, my collaborator from Seattle, who'd become one of my closest friends. "You know you're famous now, right?" she said, laughing. Architectural Digest wants to do a feature on you. The New York Times called about an interview. You're not just an architect anymore. You're a movement. That's terrifying. That's impact. Kennedy, you're changing lives. Embrace it. I looked out at the Manhattan skyline, thinking about how far I'd come from that suffocating house in Cherry Creek, from that marriage where I'd been constantly erasing myself to make room for other people's needs. Do you ever think about what would have happened if you'd stayed?
Claire asked.
Sometimes. I'd probably still be in that house, waiting for permission to live my life, watching Diane make decisions about children I didn't have yet. Do you regret it? The divorce? Not for a second. Walking away from that marriage was the best decision I ever made. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me check. This is Sarah Hartwell. I'm engaged to Jason. I know this is strange, but I was hoping we could talk. It's important. I stare at the message, surprised that hearing from Jason's fiancée, his second fiancée, apparently the first engagement hadn't worked out. Didn't hurt at all. Everything okay? Claire asked. Jason's new fiancée wants to talk to me. Are you going to respond? I thought about it. Maybe. I'm curious what she wants.
Y textabak, y Sara.
I'm in New York for a conference, but I'll be back in Boulder next week. We can meet for coffee if you'd like. She responded immediately. Thank you. I really appreciate it. The following week, I met Sarah at a cafe in Boulder. She was younger than me, maybe 28, pretty in a conventional way. She looked nervous. Thank you for meeting me, she said. I know this is weird. It's fine. What did you want to talk about? She took a breath. Jason and I have been engaged for 6 months. We're supposed to get married in 3 months. But I'm having concerns. About his mother. I couldn't help but smile. Let me guess. Diane has opinions about everything. Everything. The wedding venue, the dress, the guest list, where we should live, when we should have kids. And Jason keeps saying, let's ask my mom, or my mom thinks, or my mom knows best.
Sounds familiar.
I found out about you, about your marriage to him, and why it ended. I read an article about your work that mentioned the divorce, and it said you left because the marriage didn't support your career. But that's not the whole story, is it? I looked at this young woman, seeing myself 7 years ago, trying to convince myself that love would be enough. No, I said honestly. That's not the whole story. Will you tell me the truth, please? I need to know what I'm getting into. I spent the next hour telling her everything. The wedding that became Diane's production. The honeymoon I didn't choose. The house 2 blocks from his mother. The constant interference. The broken promises. The way every decision ran through Diane first. He's in therapy, Sarah said when I finished. He told me about enmeshment, about how he's working on setting boundaries. Is he? Setting boundaries. She was quiet for a moment.
He talks about it.
But when it comes down to actual decisions, he still defers to her. We're supposed to be choosing our honeymoon destination, and he keeps saying he needs to run options by his mother because she's traveled extensively and knows what's good. And the wedding planning? Diane has taken over most of it. Jason says it makes her happy that we should let her help. Sound familiar? Very. Did you love him when you married him? I did. Or I loved who I thought he was. But love isn't enough when someone can't prioritize you. When you're always third in your own marriage after your husband and his mother. Sarah's eyes were watering. I was afraid you'd say that. Can I ask you something? Why did you want to meet me? Because I needed to know if it was just you. If maybe we're too demanding, or if you didn't understand how close some families are. That's what Diane says. That you had unreasonable expectations. Of course she does. But it wasn't you, was it? It's them. It's their dynamic. Jason is a good person, I said carefully. He's not malicious or cruel. He's just unable to separate from his mother. And unless he does real work in therapy, unless he makes fundamental changes, he'll never be able to put a wife first. Because he was programmed from birth to put Diane first. Should I marry him? I wanted to tell her no.
To run.
To save herself years of suffocation and resentment. But it wasn't my decision to make. That's something only you can answer, I said. But I'll tell you what I wish someone had told me. Pay attention to patterns, not promises. Don't marry potential. Marry reality. And if you can't imagine living like this forever, with Diane involved in every major decision, with Jason checking with her before checking with you, then don't assume it'll change after the wedding. It won't. Sarah was crying now. I thought I was being paranoid, that I was making too big a deal out of it. You're not. Trust yourself. Your instincts are telling you something important. She wiped her eyes. What did you do? When you finally realized you had to leave, I documented everything. I built financial independence. I made a plan. And when I was ready, I executed it cleanly and decisively. But Sarah, I waited 5 years. 5 years of slowly losing myself, of fighting battles I couldn't win, of compromising until I didn't recognize my own life anymore. Don't do what I did. If you're going to leave, leave now. Don't waste years trying to fix something that isn't yours to fix. We talked for another hour. I gave her Rebecca Martinez's contact information, just in case. I told her about resources for understanding enmeshment, about books that had helped me understand what I'd been dealing with. When we parted, she hugged me. Thank you for being honest. I know you didn't have to meet me. I wish someone had warned me. I'm glad I could help. I watched her walk away, hoping she'd have the courage to choose herself. 2 weeks later, I got a text from Sarah. I called off the wedding. Thank you for giving me the clarity I needed. Jason is devastated, and Diane is furious, but I know it's the right decision. I texted back. Proud of you. Choose yourself. Always. That evening, I told Michael about the meeting. Do you think Jason will ever figure it out? He asked. I don't know. Maybe. But it's not my problem anymore. Do you ever regret it? Not the divorce, but the time you spent trying. Sometimes, 5 years is a long time to give to something that was never going to work. But I also learned a lot about myself, about what I need, what I won't compromise on, who I want to be. And who do you want to be? I thought about it. Someone who designs beautiful things. Someone who helps people. Someone who chooses herself. Someone who builds a life on her own terms, not someone else's blueprint. He kissed me. Mission accomplished. 6 months after Sarah called off her wedding, I received an invitation to speak at a women's leadership conference in Denver. The theme was designing your own life. I almost declined. Denver still held complicated memories. But then I thought about all the women who might be sitting in that audience, struggling in marriages or relationships that were slowly erasing them. I accepted. The conference was held at a hotel in downtown Denver, not far from the Cherry Creek neighborhood, where I used to live. I drove past the house, my old house, Jason's house now, on my way there. It looked exactly the same. Diane had probably made sure of that. I felt nothing looking at it. No nostalgia, no regret, just a distant sort of curiosity about the person I'd been when I lived there. At the conference, I gave a keynote about designing your life with the same intentionality you'd bring to designing a building. About knowing your values, setting boundaries, making choices that reflect who you actually are rather than who others want you to be. We spend so much time trying to fit into blueprints other people have drawn for us, I said. Our parents' expectations, our partners' needs, society's ideas about who we should be. But you're the architect of your own life. You get to decide what you build, what materials you use, what foundation you lay. And sometimes, the most important design decision is knowing what to tear down to make room for something better. The audience, hundreds of women, stood and applauded. Afterward, dozens of women approached me. They told me their stories. Marriages with interfering in-laws. Careers they'd abandoned for partners who didn't support them. Dreams they'd put on hold because someone else needed something more. One woman, probably 60, squeezed my hand. I stayed in my marriage for 40 years, letting my husband's mother control everything. I wish I'd had your courage when I was young. It's never too late, I told her. You can still choose yourself. Another woman younger, maybe 25, my fiancé's mother hates me. Everyone says it'll get better after the wedding, but your story made me realize it won't. I think I need to call it off. Trust your instincts, I said. And don't marry potential. Marry reality. I stayed for hours, talking to woman after woman, sharing my story, offering encouragement. This, I realized, was part of why I'd gone through it. So, I could help others avoid the same mistakes, or find the courage to leave when they needed to. That evening, as I was leaving the hotel, I ran into someone I hadn't seen in 5 years. Jason. He looked older, more worn. Still handsome, but with a tiredness around his eyes that hadn't been there before. Kennedy, he said, surprised. I didn't know you were in town. Conference. I'm speaking. I heard. Congratulations on all your success. You're everywhere these days. Mom saw an article about you in Architecture magazine. I'll bet that killed her, I thought. How are you? I asked.
I'm okay. Still in therapy.
Still working on things. I heard about Sarah. I'm sorry it didn't work out. He smiled sadly. She came to see you. She told me.
She did.
I hope I didn't overstep.
No.
She needed to hear the truth. I'm glad she talked to you. He paused. I'm glad she made the choice you made. To leave before wasting more years. You've really been working on yourself. I have. My therapist helped me understand that I was using relationships to avoid dealing with my mom. Expecting my partners to accept something I couldn't even acknowledge was wrong. That's good insight. Kennedy, I owe you an apology. A real one. Not the half-hearted one I gave when we were divorcing. Jason.
Please.
Let me say this. He took a breath. I'm sorry I made you fight for basic respect in our marriage. I'm sorry I chose my mother over you. Every single time. I'm sorry I gaslit you into thinking you were unreasonable when you were just asking to be prioritized by your own husband. You deserved so much better than I gave you. It was the apology I needed 5 years ago. And while it didn't change anything, it meant something to hear it now.
Thank you, I said.
I appreciate that. Are you happy? In Boulder, with your work, with your life? I am. Genuinely, completely happy. Good. You deserve that. He smiled. I saw you're with someone. The photographer. He seems good for you.
He is.
We're good together.
I'm glad.
Really? He looked like he wanted to say more but didn't. Jason, I hope you find your way. I hope therapy helps you build the life you want, separate from your mother's expectations. Me too. Though I don't know if that's possible. It is. It just requires making choices that are uncomfortable. Setting boundaries that feel impossible. Choosing yourself even when it disappoints the people you love. Like you did. Like I did. We said goodbye, and I watched him walk away. I felt compassion for him, for the boy who'd been programmed to prioritize his mother above all else, who'd never learned how to be his own person. But I felt more pride for myself, for having the courage to leave, to rebuild, to choose my own happiness over his comfort. I drove back to Boulder that night, to the house Michael and I had built, to the life I designed with intention and care. And I felt nothing but gratitude for the woman I'd become. 7 years after my divorce, I published a book. It wasn't about architecture, though that was part of it. It was about designing your life with purpose, about setting boundaries, about choosing yourself. The title was Building from the Foundation Up, Architecting a Life of Intention and Autonomy. It became a bestseller. Women reached out from all over the world, sharing their stories of leaving controlling relationships, setting boundaries with interfering in-laws, choosing careers over marriages that didn't support them. I started a podcast, interviewing women who'd rebuilt their lives after leaving situations that were slowly erasing them. Each episode ended with the same question. What would you tell the woman who's still in it, who doesn't think she can leave? The answers were always variations on the same theme. You're stronger than you think. Choose yourself. It's never too late. 8 years after my divorce, Michael and I were hiking in Patagonia when he proposed. We were standing at the top of a mountain, overlooking glaciers and pristine lakes, and he pulled out a ring. I know marriage isn't something you want, he said. And I don't need it either. But I wanted to give you this as a symbol of what we've built together. Not a promise to stay forever, because we can't control forever. Just a commitment to keep choosing each other every day, as long as it's right for both of us. I cried, because this was everything marriage should have been, and never was with Jason. A choice, not an obligation. A partnership, not a hierarchy. Something built on mutual respect and autonomy rather than control and enmeshment. Yes, I said. I'll choose you. Every day. We got married in a small ceremony in the mountains outside Boulder, just close friends and family. No production, no 300 guests, no one's mother making decisions. My parents were there, crying happy tears. Michael's mother gave a toast about how happy she was that her son had found a partner who complimented him without needing him. It was everything my first wedding hadn't been. During our vows, I said something I'd been thinking about for years. I promised to choose you while also choosing myself, to build a life together that honors both our autonomy and our partnership, to never ask you to shrink so I can grow, and to never shrink so you can grow. To design our life together with intention, transparency, and mutual respect. Michael's vows echoed mine. I promise to support your dreams as much as my own. To make decisions with you, not for you. To be your partner, not your dependent or your authority. To build a relationship where we both flourish. 10 years after my divorce, I was invited back to the UN for another summit. This time, I wasn't just presenting. I was receiving an award for my contributions to sustainable development and global poverty reduction. My housing projects had spread to 23 countries. Thousands of families lived in homes I'd helped design, beautiful, dignified, empowering spaces that proved poverty didn't require ugly solutions. Standing on that stage, accepting that award, I thought about the Kennedy who'd stood in that nursery 10 years ago, looking at paint samples for a baby she didn't want, in a house she'd never chosen, in a life that had been designed by someone else. If I could go back and tell her anything, it would be this. The courage to leave will give you the freedom to build something extraordinary. The life you want is possible, but first you have to be brave enough to tear down the life someone else wanted for you. After the ceremony, I called my parents. We're so proud of you, my mother said, crying. Everything you've built, everything you've become. Thanks, Mom. You know, I always worried about you. When you divorced Jason, I was scared you'd regret it, that you'd be alone, that you'd struggle. I'm so glad I was wrong. Me too. Diane called me last year, she added. Did I tell you?
No.
What did she want? She wanted to know if we'd seen you, if we knew how you were doing. I think she was fishing for information to give to Jason, or maybe she was just curious. I told her you were thriving and that we were proud of you. How did she react? She said she always knew you were selfish and that Jason was better off without you. My mother laughed. I told her that choosing yourself isn't selfish, it's survival. And I thanked her for pushing you out of that marriage because it led you to the life you were meant to have. I smiled. What did she say to that? She hung up. I haven't heard from her since. That night, Michael and I sat on our deck, looking out at the mountains we'd chosen to call home. Do you ever think about what your life would have been like if you'd stayed? He asked. Sometimes. But not with regret. More like curiosity about the alternate timeline. And I'd probably have 2 kids I didn't want in that house I hated, designing my life around Diane's expectations. I'd be successful maybe, but hollow. Accomplished on paper. Empty inside. Do you think Jason ever figured it out? I'd wondered that myself. I occasionally heard updates through mutual acquaintances. He was still in therapy. He'd set some boundaries with Diane, though she still had more influence than was healthy. He was dating, but nothing serious. I think he's trying, I said. But some patterns are hard to break, especially when you've been groomed for them since birth. Do you forgive him?
Ida.
Not because what he did was okay, but because holding on to anger would only hurt me. He was as much a victim of Diane's control as I was. The difference is I got out. Michael pulled me close. I'm glad you did. Me too. As we sat there, watching the stars appear over the mountains, I thought about the architecture of a life well lived. It required a strong foundation, knowing your values, understanding your worth, believing you deserved autonomy and respect. It required careful planning, documenting patterns, building resources, creating exit strategies when necessary. It required courage to tear down what wasn't working, even when it looked good from the outside, even when people said you were making a mistake. And it required vision, the ability to imagine something better and the determination to build it, even when you had to start from nothing. I'd built a life I was proud of, not just because of the awards or the recognition or the impact, but because it was mine. Every decision, every choice, every corner of my existence reflected who I actually was, not who someone else wanted me to be. That was worth more than any marriage certificate, any mother-in-law's approval, any societal expectation about what a woman's life should look like. I was an architect. And the most important thing I'd ever designed was myself. If this story resonated with you, please take a moment to like this video and leave a comment sharing where you're watching from. Subscribe and hit the notification bell for more stories about women who chose themselves and built extraordinary lives. And if you're in a relationship where someone else is making all the decisions, where you feel like you're always coming third, remember, you are the architect of your own life. You get to decide what you build. And sometimes, the most important design decision is knowing what to tear down to make room for something better. Choose yourself, always.